And with that, welcome to today's video and a beautiful morning in Hamburg, Germany right now. And today's video topic is something that I get asked quite a lot. Hey Danny, where do you get your English from? Where do you learn it? How do you learn it? Do you have any tips? And I've never really took the time to tell you the full story, and I've been doing YouTube videos at this point for like 3-4 years in English, and I think to really learn it, it was like quite an interesting story, and I think it's also the best way to learn a language. So today's video is going to be on the one side my story of how I learned the language, maybe a few tips, but also even more important of how I think learning a new language. And I think that I want to learn another one, not because I just think it's cool to speak the language, but because what it can do in your mind, the certain shifts and certain insights about the world it can give you. But first, my story.
Something I can never be without, yeah. Ain't got coming. Thought I was a man of my own.
I got to the Alster here, and the first thing of how I learned English, I would say I really started out with like 11, 12, 13. Obviously in school in Germany the education system is quite good when it comes to that. There is a very specific way of how Germans like to speak English. But when I was like 12, 13, I started to watch a lot of YouTube. Back in the day, the pranking niche was very, very big, up and coming. People like Vitaly ZDTV and Simple Pickup, you know, just like public reactions, public experiments, things like that. And I really love this stuff. And this was also probably one of the main reasons why I wanted to go to the US back in the day. Obviously the culture is like very prominent everywhere, so you watch pretty much YouTube videos every single day, and this is also the type of comments that I get every once in a while from people, maybe from like Ukraine, because I have a few big videos. They're like, hey, I watch your videos to learn English. So I love that. This is definitely what I did back in the day as well. You just listen to it, and I still do. I would say every day I listen to sometimes an hour, sometimes 2, 3, 4 if I'm listening to podcasts, when I may be on the road, when I may be on the bus. And this, just by hearing it all the time, you can pick up on a lot of new words, but you also have to use them. And this is, I would say, the biggest part of how I learned English, which I'm gonna share with you. I think, man, there are like a bunch of birds coming out here. I'm gonna be heading home, packing up my stuff, heading to the gym, and then I'm gonna tell you the story of how I ended up pretty much in the United States and where I learned most of my English. I think since then it changed a little bit. I love it. The dog is raising the energy right now. Alrighty guys, back at home. Just updated my Instagram story a little bit. On there I'm usually a little bit more on the jokey side, keeping it casual. Check it out if you want, just my morning coffee stories. And yeah, back at home. Next stop is gonna be the gym. But first, the big step where I definitely learned most of my English, the first like really dive deep into the language, has been during my exchange year. I mentioned it roughly a little bit here and there. So basically, I think, man, how long is it ago? Like 6 years, 7 years, kind of like that. I think when I was like 16, 17, I did a high school exchange in the United States. I've been living for 1 year in Ohio. Actually got to travel around back in the day with my host dad. Really cool guy. I had a great year. Since then I have been back once again, and yeah, actually 8 days heading out again to New York City, but to get back into learning English. Basically, I got there and I felt pretty comfortable right away. Like I watched the videos for years, I learned it in school, but there I had a really deep dive and I had to speak English every single day. It has been my life for 1 year, and after, I would say, 2 months, it was just like my second nature. I do definitely have to say that. But with that also, there have been definitely some downsides, I would say. We're gonna talk about that after the gym. First, let's get there. Let's change. Alrighty, I'm right now at the amazing Stadtpark, pretty much city park, you could say. Got done at the gym last week of cutting down, feeling okay, a little bit low energy, but the past few months have been really interesting of how my body just changed. But get back into how I learned English. However, basically, I went to school, I did a high school exchange in the United States, in Ohio to be specific. And next to just learning the language, obviously for me it has been also, I remember being in English class with Mr. Whitmore, one of my favorite classes, read Shakespeare, all the good stuff. There has been like a few people, it has been all the time, yeah, like, you know, in this Shakespeare book, yeah, like you know what I'm saying, like, and I really picked up on that a lot, and still like some people sometimes comment on my videos, yo, you're trying to sound American, This is how I learned it, and since I've been in Australia a little bit, since I spent some time in the UK, I try to pick up also on other mannerisms, and with that kind of develop my own style.
Leash is off, suit is on point. Won't cause a scene or stir up no clash on second thought. Venice by fourth. She's on the job, but she's staying on Wilshire Boulevard.
Alrighty guys, back at my place from the park. Actually right now, doing some busy work, packing up some stuff, sipping on a little vegan protein powder and oats shake. No doubt, my real English I learned during my exchange year. I really got conversational with it. If you get dropped into an environment where everybody just speaks a new language, you have to adapt. It's almost like a survival instinct that just gives you capacities to learn a language that you maybe weren't aware of before. And this is also what I would definitely recommend people doing, is getting into an environment where other people speak English, be it traveling to a new country, maybe doing like a language speaking trip, maybe doing an au pair year, maybe looking for a job in a new country, or even if you're like maybe transitioning into a job in a new country where you're gonna have to speak another language, just do it. You're gonna pick up on it real quick if they're gonna speak it in the environment. But even to add to that is, I think the biggest mistake that people do is they learn English from a non-native speaker. They learn English from somebody who learned it themselves as well. They spend a lot of time maybe living back then again in Germany, living back then again in Russia or whatever, and maybe losing a little bit of their skill, of their knowledge, but also picking up certain mannerisms, certain way of saying things as a native person wouldn't do. So necessarily, I'm not the best person to learn English from in this case. From German people who try to speak English, from Russian people who try to speak English. You learn English from somebody who never really knew it perfectly, and you're always gonna directly, everybody's gonna know that you are not a native speaker, or that there's like something not right. And obviously with me, most people notice it as well, but just out of a conversational situation, it doesn't like happens right away. Oh my God, where are you from? Like, oh, are you from Germany? I hear it. Or like, are you Russian? No, I'm not Russian. How do you hear that in my accent?
Leash is off, Suit is on point.
Right now,
Won't cause
my first stop is bringing away these bad boys to the post office. In the past few weeks, really have been ordering a lot of different stuff from Amazon. Some stuff was good, others wasn't, so let's get it back and then heading out to our next destination for today. And also I want to talk about the big danger of once you learn the language, what's happening then. On my way to the city, behind me the city rental bike, catching a bus in a minute. And what I wanted to say is learning a new language is really the one thing. I've known so many people who have either been on a high school exchange, maybe they work abroad, and when you actually get then into a different environment or in the environment you've used to be in before, usually you use track of the language, you use the feeling for it very quickly. Like a good example, I'm sorry bro for bashing you, but my brother, like his German used to be obviously pretty much perfect, and then he started to spend a lot of less time here, and it goes really quickly. Same for English. I have a good buddy who's actually speaking more than 10 languages, and that's also what he says. Whatever language he uses the most, that's where he has the most feeling, the most expertise of practically using it. So for me, I think just because I was doing the videos, because I was traveling, and yeah, therefore I would say you have to find a way to practice it. And for me, it was creating videos, listening to podcasts, people having actual conversations in American English and British English and whatever accents they had. And this is the one thing. Again, learning just a language is the one thing. The reason why I actually wanted to make this video is to share with you the certain new worlds that open up to you once you do learn a new language, the new perspectives and the new awareness for just the world, but also your place in it. And on my way to Düsseldorf, we're gonna talk about just that.
stir up no clash on second thought. Venice by fourth. She's on the job, but she's staying home. Well,
And with that, we are somewhere very different. I think the last point that I've left off was just this idea of how knowing a different language and also living in an area where they speak a different language, a very different one, can really change your life and your perspective on it. I'm right now here in Düsseldorf working on a little project I might tell you about in the next video. But yeah, this video escalated really. I'm right now at the other side of the country, soon gonna be at the other side of the world. But what I really mean by that is that, let me give you the example of me speaking Russian. I have my American friends. I have some English, some Australian friends, obviously lived a lot of time in Germany, and I just see such a huge contrast between Europe and America. I just see such a huge contrast between Europe and like Russian speaking countries. Also Ukraine, like obviously Ukrainian speaking, but that is again a different story for another video. And what I mean by that is just very different outlooks on life, maybe even different traditions and customs and just culturally different ideas. So for example, like how a relationship should look like, how a society should look like. They are not major differences, but slight little ideas that make you overthink a little bit. Who are you? How are you living your life? And with that also have a little bit more perspective, a little bit more of whenever you think like, hey, life has to be this way and this is the truth. You go a little bit back, and because you have this reference of a completely different culture, because you know their language, you have really dived in, or maybe you have like multiple backgrounds as I do, and I really like this idea. And this is one of probably the biggest reasons why I want to learn a different language. And by I mean this feeling, I don't necessarily mean just having their culture in terms of their food and just like it's fun and things like that, but a lot more about getting a better perspective of you and your place in the world. And with that, the sun is gonna be soon down. Heading out to New York City in four days at this point. With that, until then, you gotta roll to see, and I'm out. Peace out.
stir up no clash on second thought. Venice by fourth. She's on the job, but she's staying home.